back in the day, when Muhammad Ali would get into these fights with guys that he was clearly better than, he didn't get them out in one round. Someone sort of like a Mike Tyson would do, right? Tyson would get in there and he would just be so vicious and he'd get these guys out of there as soon as possible. Ali instead, in some cases, would put on, his, for the fans, he would go out there and he would move around and he would throw punches and he would throw his jab and he'd fire right hands. But in a sense, he was kind of carrying the guy for a few rounds. And, he would also, sometimes he would also specifically not knock guys down just so he could punish them for much longer than necessary. But in this case, I kind of wonder if Mayweather, does it look good for him to knock Conor out in the first round? Probably not, because the people who just paid $100 will be really pissed off. Not that Mayweather would really care, right? Because if this is the end of his career, then who really cares? But I do wonder if he wants to kind of showcase his style a little bit and make McGregor miss, show his defensive style, show the head movement, show that he can see McGregor's punches coming from a mile away, cut off the ring, get McGregor wrapped up in the corner like he doesn't really know what's going on. I wonder if we're going to see some of that with Floyd. And if we do, maybe this fight does go into the middle rounds, into 8 or 9 rounds or something. But at that point, I also think McGregor is going to be so tired that he may, I don't know if he'll even make it that far.
All right, to address 2 points, one from Peter and one from you, Gigi. First, the Pacquiao fight that you referred to, Peter, that was one of those 7 fights in a row that I said went to decision. And as for Gigi's point, well, that's kind of where the odds are falling right now. If you look at sites that have a line out there, there's a huge, just huge impossibility in the line looking at Conor McGregor's chances of actually knocking out Floyd Mayweather, whereas I don't think they're looking at it the other way around in the terms of Mayweather being a minus 900 favorite. He doesn't need to knock out McGregor with 7 decisions in a row. We already know that he understands the sweet science of hitting and not getting hit to the degree that he could just avoid Conor McGregor for all 12 rounds and easily win the fight.
And if that's what happens, in a sense, that's a win for McGregor. And that wouldn't hurt him at all, I don't think. Going back to the original, and now really dating ourselves here, right? Going back, 40 years, 41 years to the original Rocky. And you're taking like Apollo Creed, who's the greatest champion. He's the Ali of the movie. And Rocky is a hand-picked guy because the guy Apollo was going to fight got hurt, and so they needed a guy for a date. And so they chose Rocky's this left-handed guy that nobody knew. And so the whole thing behind that story was Rocky just wanted to prove that he could go the distance. He didn't give a crap if he won or if he lost. Like, he just wanted to prove himself that he could stay in there with the top guy. Now, for McGregor, if he is able to last 12 rounds with Floyd Mayweather, that is an absolute win. If he is knocked out early, if he is knocked out in the 6th or 7th or the 8th, not to say that I think that's going to really necessarily hurt him that much, but those are probably worse scenarios for him as far as how people will view him in this fight. But if he goes the distance with Floyd Mayweather in Floyd Mayweather's sport, I think that's tremendous. I think that's a win.
And that's also what makes it such a huge risk for UFC. To bring it full circle to you said, what is the upside for UFC? If he comes out of this an even bigger star, then what have they gained other than a one-time payout from whatever fee they got to let Showtime and Mayweather Promotions put on this fight? I mean, they may get 50, 60, 80 million, I don't know. The numbers are not disclosed. They've actually signed a non-disclosure agreement about how much everybody's going to make. But if UFC gets that one-time payoff that helps their estimated earnings before taxes and pays down some of their debt that WME IMG spent to buy UFC, that's all gravy for them, but then they may be cutting themselves off at the knees in terms of getting McGregor back once he's gone 12 rounds with Money Mayweather and no longer needs UFC.
I'm going to give Dana White the benefit of the doubt. I think he has to feel like he's got at least McGregor signed, for another fight, maybe the December fight that they talk about. And I don't think Dana's going in here blindfolded. Like, he knows the risks. I think he understands, what he's getting himself into. And I sure hope that he believes that his relationship with Conor McGregor is strong enough to where, McGregor has promised that, he'll do 1 or 2 or 3 more fights or whatever. I want to give him that benefit of the doubt. But I also remember UFC 200 and remember how strong their relationship wasn't at that time. So, while I do sort of wonder for the UFC, I want to see it play out before I really say anything about that, because I just think Dana White is too smart of a guy, and I don't think he would set himself up like that. And I guess until we know the true story, maybe WME IMG, really stepped in and was like, we got to do it. We got to make some money back some way. But until then, I'm just going to trust that Dana at least has McGregor for one fight.
All right. I got one more question before we have to get to some Bellator talk that's in the boxing realm, and it's Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo Alvarez. How much has a Mayweather versus McGregor fight hurt the potential buy rate and audience interest in that fight?
I think it hurts it a lot, actually. And you're talking about how much does the Mayweather fight hurt the Gennady Golovkin fight, right?
Yes.
I think it hurts it a lot. And this is so interesting because so there was a tug of war for this time frame. Let's go back to Canelo, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And that fight, after the fight's over, they do like a WWE style, lights out, who's coming in the ring. It's Gennady Golovkin, and they're announcing this fight that, people didn't think were going to happen, or people were desperately wanting to happen. And so at that point, there were already the discussions about Mayweather and McGregor. So really, from that point, the countdown was like, okay, who's going to get the September date? Because it's always sort of like September and then May. Like, those are kind of the dates for the big fights in boxing. And so Oscar got it first. And he announced the fight. And he's like, okay, here's when we're going to fight. It's on this day and this time. And it was sort of like, ha, 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 we got the date. And then I think Dana White and Oscar even were having a little bit of a feud on social media. Oscar had made a statement. This is, I don't know how many months back, but basically saying that Conor McGregor should instead fight Canelo. And I don't know how serious he was, but Oscar and Mayweather don't like each other at all, so there's always going to be shots going that way. And then when the talks of this fight, between Mayweather and McGregor started getting hot and heavy, like, we were all wondering, like, what's the date? And so we just all assumed, like, maybe November, because, Floyd didn't get that September date. So when they announced August, I was just like, man, they got Oscar again. Both Floyd and Dana, who have Oscar as as rivals right now, I guess, for today, they got him. And I was just like, oh, unbelievable. Poor Oscar, because he was so sure and so smug that he had got this date and he had finally got one over on these guys. And they came right in and they took it away from him. I don't know what Canelo and Gennady Golovkin would have done without that fight. I was thinking like 2 million buys, possibly. because they could market it very similarly as the event of the year. Like, this is the can't miss, fear of missing out event. But now, with this fight, the casual fans who aren't boxing fans are probably going to buy this fight. And are they going to want to spend $80 or $100 in 3 weeks? And I think I'm going to say no. And so I think that buy rate could be hurt by several 100,000 buys, even though it is by a multitude of a million the better fight. And it's unfortunate because I think Canelo has really come into his own, and Gennady Golovkin is not a mainstream star, but he's such an exciting fighter. He's kind of like the hardcore boxing's fighter, like the people's champ of the hardcores. And so it's going to be such an interesting fight. And I'm definitely going to watch both, but for that casual fans dollar, who are they going to watch? I feel like they're going to watch the circus show instead of the best fight. And that's kind of what, promoting in general has taught us over the years, right? It's never the best match or the best fight or the best, pound for pound. It's more about the best hype. So the bigger stars, like, that's what it's about.